I'm joined today by Harinder Ghatora, holistic life coaching and counsellor. Harinder, thank you so much for joining me.
Very welcome. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really honoured to be here.
Well, Harinder, I wanted to just sort of introduce you to our viewers. So if you could just tell us a little bit about your journey, how you came to be doing life coaching and counselling, and the sorts of clients you meet with, and why kind of taking ownership of your spirituality, healing and growth is so important for one's way of turning up in the world.
Okay, so I've been working as a life coach since 2012. I'm a statistician, that's my academic background, but I had a complete life change in 2008. And it was actually through some difficulties with my son's health where I came into contact with lots of amazing people, found some healers and therapists, and through that journey realised that I actually wanted to be doing something a little bit more meaningful. Even though I loved my job, that I felt like that I was here to do something a little bit bigger than just crunch numbers. So that's how I got involved. And I've been very passionate about offering a holistic practice because I've realised, again, through my own personal experience, my professional work, and the experiences that I've had with my friends and family, that life is about balancing all aspects of ourselves, and that includes our physical health, our mental health, emotional health, our spiritual health. We can't isolate one part of ourselves and think that everything is going to be okay. And often the roots of issues lie in a very multi-dimensional space, and we have to access all parts of our being, honour all of them, to bring ourselves into a state of balance.
Beautiful. And just give me sort of an idea of the types of clients or profile of clients, if you like, that you work with.
I work with quite a diverse range of clients, but I seem to attract people that have a clear understanding of the spiritual dimension of their being, and they also then tend to be quite highly sensitive people. So a lot of my work is around helping people to understand their sensitivity, manage their sensitivity, and often at the beginning they can see it as a bit of a curse, but over time we realise that that's actually quite a blessing if you know how to manage your sensitivity in the world. It's life crises that bring people to my practice, and again, there's a spiritual dimension to that, because most people's difficulties are often, especially severe difficulties like a huge bereavement, diagnosis of illness, mental breakdown, anxiety, depression, those kind of things. They're often a spiritual awakening. There's some part of a person's being that's kind of screaming out and saying, I need attention. It could be trauma from a younger life. And with my healing work, there's all sorts of issues that creep in even from previous lifetimes. It's not just all to do with what goes on here. So those difficulties are an opportunity for a person to kind of wake up and honour or get an acknowledgement and honour all the different parts of their being.
You've touched on healing. Tell me a little bit more. You offer divine healing, and I'd love our views to understand the process and the difference actually that it might make for them after.
Divine healing is just the most amazing, multi-dimensional, powerful, all-encompassing healing modality. I've trained in quite a number of different healing modalities, but I have to say this is the one which I finally settled on, and it's the only one I offer now in my practice. The idea behind divine healing is that at the core of our being, as you know, we have the spark of the divine. We are the pure essence of the divine, the universe, God, whatever you wish to name that power. But we have a multidimensional nature, and there's lots of different parts of us, and within those lower parts of us there are lots of distortions. So there could be distortions being held in the body, trauma, emotional disturbances, thoughts, beliefs, judgments, sabotage programs. There's all sorts of stuff sitting in our mental body. and distortions in our soul, where over the millennia of us coming and going and visiting the planet, and all the interactions that we've had, the choices that we've made, and the consequences of those choices have led to almost like layers of, I don't like to call it dirt, but there are barriers between us and the divine part of us. And what divine healing does is very elegantly go in, identify what these distortions are, and just ask for them to be removed. We connect to the highest parts of a person's being. It's based on the law of ask and it shall be given. So we do a series of what we call command codes, and we literally just reprogram the holographic matrix, and people's experience of life changes quite dramatically.
Can you give us some sort of examples of people that you have done divine healing sessions on that you don't mind sharing about, so that we can just be really clear on how it unfolds?
Okay, people often come with physical difficulties, for example. So somebody could come and say, I've got this chronic backache, I've done everything, I just can't seem to shift it. Now, within divine healing, we have lots of different reference manuals. So for that person, I would go into the spinal chart, and I would take a look at exactly where in their spine the issue is coming from. And you find that there are trapped energies in that part. There could be things like low self-worth, that comes up quite a lot, or just feeling overburdened or insecure about life. The lower back is all, there's also a link, as you know, with the spine and the issues around the chakras. So there could be energies like that trapped, so just what we call low frequency energies, which need to be brought to a person's awareness so that the body then doesn't have to hold the energy of that particular program. Some of these things go back to ancestral lines. There are often programs that are coming down, either the paternal or the maternal ancestral lineage, going back very many generations. There's an amazing thing going on now where people are becoming very spiritually powerful and awake. And there's a lot of back kind of issues that for very many generations have just been passing down. But there's something going on now with the planetary shift that those issues are now being cleared away once and for all for the entire ancestral lineage. So that's another very powerful part of divine healing, because it accesses all the multi-dimensional parts of your being. There could be issues with trauma or past lives, and all of that gets cleared away. And the other type of issues that I see with divine healing are when people feel that they're trying to achieve something and they actually can't. There's a block, an obstacle, things aren't flowing, working. So then we would look at what we would ask someone's higher self, can you please identify what the blocks are? And then through the process of investigation, we would arrive at the charts that will say, well, here are the blocks. Often it's beliefs, I can't do it, or fears around what would it be if I did actually get this thing. Again, trauma often comes up. Sabotage programs are very strong for people, again, which are rooted in fear, hidden ego agendas. So the whole intra conflict, so one part of a person wants to go one way, but then the another part that's hidden is pulling them in another direction, and then they end up getting stuck. So in divine healing, we would identify what those obstacles are, and we would reprogram those parts of somebody's holographic matrix and allow them to become integrated as one, so that at least they're moving in a single direction.
I find that fascinating because I can identify with chapters of feeling very stark, actually. And it always brought this curiosity of how much we are governed by our subconscious and unconscious minds,
yes,
relative to our conscious worlds. And there's also been a shift in you know, the concepts and principles of the laws of attraction, and at that very base level where you're almost like a little kid, right, trying to manifest toys, if you like. But actually things seem to be very much governed in that subconscious and unconscious world.
Absolutely, yeah. It does make me smile, the I don't know, can you call it arrogance? I don't know what other word comes to mind. That seems a little harsh, but the arrogance of the lower mind, because it thinks it knows everything. It thinks it's in control of everything. And, you know, here's the cosmic joke. It so isn't. And, you know, that analogy of the iceberg where there's only 10% of it above the water. It's hard for that 10% to be shifting 90% of hidden stuff, which is actually calling all the shots, making you react in a certain way, creating your experience of life. Yeah. And divine accesses all of that. That's the beauty of it.
And I'm guessing, you know, when people make that choice, right, I'm going to really work on my inner world, my own growth, my own healing, my own spirituality, I'm guessing that the inner shift is then mirrored back by the universe.
100%. I mean, that's one of the other great illusions of life, is that we're all living in this universe and it's the same for all of us, and actually it isn't. I mean, you and I are both going to view the world in a different way. We literally are in our own personally projected holographic matrix. So it's our own inner stuff that's being projected outwards, which the universe is then projecting back at us, and that dictates our experience of life. You can put two people in exactly the same situation and they will react to it differently, see different things, experience that reality in two very different ways, and it's all about their inner world.
Tell me a bit about, I want to touch upon something you just shared on ancestral karma. And I'm curious, Harinder, I mean, I'm Asian, you're Asian, and I'm just curious for the Asian women, particularly out there, are there certain things that come up for us as a culture and a race, given, you know, some of the deep traumas actually that have happened with India, Pakistan, the partition. You know, for many, perhaps there was lineage of struggles for their ancestors with money, with that sense of security. Then you've got colonialism layered on top of all of that. So tell us a little bit about what comes up there for you, or what you've witnessed.
Trauma, I mean, I've used that word already very many times. Everything tends to come to two issues, self-worth and trauma. The two are linked as well. Now, if you look, you know, as you said, when you look at the history, it wasn't very many generations ago that all of those horrors around partition happened. Trauma gets locked into the human psyche, the human soul, and these deeply ingrained issues, then they just pass from lifetime to lifetime. There's this, I can't remember all the details, but I read this research about, what was it, the Holocaust, and how generations, grandchildren of Holocaust survivors were still exhibiting the behaviours and the traumas that their grandparents experienced in the concentration camps, even though they were not even on this planet at the time. You know, and also this experiment where they had got some mice, and it was a very controlled, a proper scientifically controlled experiment, where they put certain foods out in little boxes and bits of fruit, and every time that the mouse went to approach a strawberry or cherry or something, they would electrocute the mouse. So the mice very quickly realized that you don't eat that one. You can eat all the other things, but you just don't go near that one. And that behavior was being shown a couple of generations down the mice lineage. That was really quite fascinating.
Wow.
That shows that those things are being passed down through our genetic makeup and through our souls and our ancestral, down the ancestral lineage. It's not by chance. And it also shows how some people can't actually sit and identify what is causing their problem. Because how would their conscious mind ever have an awareness that this is something that happened?
Right. I mean, I didn't even meet my grandfather on my dad's side because he was already dead. I had very limited contact with my paternal grandmother. And I feel, of course, like we there's so much that's lost in the history of our forefathers that we don't know. We don't have that information a lot of the times on their struggles, what life was bringing to them. But I want to kind of bring it into a nitty gritty of like today's world, and as Asian women, as we try to reshift, I guess, the sort of patriarchy model, and women really coming into their power. What are the sort of key blocks, if you like, for a lot of Asian women that you might witness?
Well, again, my book was written specifically for Asian women, even though it's relevant to all ages and genders and backgrounds. This idea that somehow women have to be quiet, compliant, and submissive, that is still seen. Although now, it really does fill me with joy when I work with a lot of my younger female clients, is that the power is coming back. There are no younger women are not playing the game like the older women did. They are breaking through some of those barriers that were put onto them. And this is, again, causing a lot of conflict within families, within generations. But the key barriers are not speaking up, not valuing yourself, being there for everybody else, and just not really paying very much attention to your own needs. And this power imbalance between where women see themselves in terms of equality with men. I do find that I work with men as well, so I have the great privilege of being able to get insight into both sides of the story. And I've often had young men coming into my practice not being, even though they will say that I am progressive and I'm liberal and I really don't mind, but actually when it comes down to it, they still deep down hold this expectation that somehow the power, it may not be like this anymore between men and women, but it's still a little bit like this. This is quite difficult for a lot of men to understand, and it'll take a very special kind of a man who's got a lot of self-worth to realize that his wife being equal to him is not a threat to him and his masculinity and his status and his position in the world. But they will not, they struggle with that. So it shows just how deeply ingrained it is. Even when they're telling me that they're not struggling with it, there's still an expectation that my wife would be doing X, Y, and Z.
I guess it's a two-way thing, right? I think sometimes it's so deep. We don't, we've discussed, we're often just living at the tip of the iceberg level. And it's complex because I think there's a mutual projected expectation from the woman onto the man. Mm-hmm. So it's difficult because, and often I feel like the wounded dark side of the feminine can actually cause more damage.
Yes.
Both to the woman and to the man.
Yes.
Which is why, the power of speaking your truth, often there are just very distorted ways we go about feeling heard or having our truth spill over, which is actually very repelling. So you've got your quiet dormouse type that you described earlier, but you can also have a misdirected, violent aggression, right? Like non-violent communication, I guess, evolved to address these issues.
Yeah. You've actually perfectly articulated the key desire that I had to not pitch this at this is just, the speaking your truth doesn't mean you just blurt out whatever you want, you always get your way. It's way more subtle and complex and respectful than that. Because when we say step into your power, we're saying, okay, here's you being passive, you're giving all your power to the other person. That's just as bad as doing this. Well, I'm just going to say what I want. I don't really care. I'm going to get my needs met, because you're then elevating yourself above the needs of the other person. The power of speaking your truth, assertiveness, is actually this, that you listen very carefully to the other person, but you also listen to yourself. You start off with what are my preferences, needs? What would I like to happen in this situation? And then you listen to the other person, right? What would they like in this situation? And then sometimes your needs are going to take priority, and sometimes the other person's needs are going to take priority. That's what assertiveness is. It's about respect. It's about empathy. It's about understanding, but it's also hugely about self-worth and knowing that I do have a right to expect some of my needs to be met, and I can voice them, but I don't have to shout and scream and be aggressive about it.
Right. I mean, I guess it's a bit like which flavour ice cream you like at a very base level. Right. So, I mean, it was a really good friend of mine who shared this with me, and it's really stark. It's like, you could, let's say you want vanilla, but your partner wants chocolate. Well, there are so many different ways to sort of say, okay, well, enjoy your chocolate. I'm going to stay with my vanilla.
Yeah.
Or, I would love you to try vanilla. Would you like to try? And then they have a choice, yes or no. But it's like you say, it's kind of giving that freedom of space and movement. And I think often there's the distortion, particularly I think in intimate relationships, where things and energies and these beliefs can blend and merge, and often we're stuck in sort of cycles of power and control versus real, authentic freedom and respect, as you mentioned, and that true sort of sense of love where you're giving, but then there's a discernment there too, because you're not wanting to be, as you described before, that first doormat where you're just giving and so self-depleted.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. That's the critical message here in the book, is that it's about respecting yourself and very truly, genuinely respecting the other person, but at the end of the day, valuing yourself in equal measure to the other person. So not always being the one that just backs down, because that gives out quite a destructive message to people around you, because it's like, well, if I don't respect myself, then how can you ever ask anybody else to respect you? It just doesn't work like that.
But I guess it's, again, doing it in balance, right? Because I think often we can swing from one distortion to the other, which is, I need to feel self-empowered and I have to be self-respect. And then all of a sudden you're becoming unrelational in trying to bring your own self-respect back to your world. Tell me about your podcast. Recently you put one out there and you talk about a single habit that can help you bring back balance. So tell us now, what is that habit and why is it so important?
It simply is self-care. I see amazingly kind, gentle, compassionate people who would bend over backwards with their time, energy, money, love, knowledge, everything for everybody else. But they for some reason, they just cannot do that to themselves. They completely ignore their own needs. They don't know how they feel. They don't know what they want in life. They don't even do basic things like rest enough, drink enough water, they don't sleep enough, and these are the things that lead people into crisis. So, the single habit is self-care, and there's elements to that. So there's things like just being able to look after yourself, having a quiet daily routine where you have a quietness ritual where you just tune into actually, how am I feeling today? What is going on with me? Am I tired? Do I need to rest? Am I bored? Do I need to try something different or new? Active relaxation, that's another very ignored part of self-care. Lives are so busy, stress builds up without us even realizing it. How many of us actually look after ourselves enough to counteract some of that stress that our bodies then end up having to hold for us, which ends up in sickness and disease? Then there's connecting with the things that give a person joy. That's very much a part of self-care. Our creativity sits right next to our soul. It comes from that part of us. So doing things that are creative, that give you joy, that allow you to ignite that kind of childhood enthusiasm that we all had when we were kids but lost along the way somehow. Reigniting all of that is another really essential part of self-care. And then investing in yourself. Taking courses, reading books, doing things to show yourself that actually I'm just as important as the next person. A lot of what I see is people who are not their own best friend. They would do anything for their best friend. They would give them the best advice, the kindest, gentlest attitude. And then when it comes to themselves, this real harsh inner critic, or this relentless driving energy within them just will not allow them to just take care of themselves in a better way. This single self-care attitude shift could save a whole load of sickness, mental illness, disease, crises, relationship breakdowns. If we all went away into our own little spaces every now and again and really connected with ourselves.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm doing my coaching certification at the moment and life coaching certification. And it's interesting because the three fundamentals that we're trying to really bed down on are eating, moving, and sleeping.
Yes, that's right.
Which are just extraordinary self-care. And it's interesting because, I've noticed just, for myself, trying to really heal sort of my gut health, it's only really started to heal when I just shifted my perception and relationship with food to a space where you realize that every mouthful you take is an act of self-love or self-violation to a certain extent. Yes. But it's a journey. And again, it's how do we strike that balance between service, which is important too for the soul, and recognition that actually we too are souls that need self-service.
That's right. It's a divine responsibility, self-care. There is the spark of the divine in all of us. Would we, if we honoured that part of us, would we treat ourselves the way that we do? Quite frankly, it's our body that has the last laugh. Because without your body, your soul can't do anything. Your mind can't do anything. If you cast your mind back to the last time you were unwell and your body wasn't cooperating, it didn't matter how many meetings were in the diary or what was going on.
I've been there, and they all have to get cancelled, and then you're back in your rut, you're back feeling stuck. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. Just on healing, Harinder, I really want to talk to you about colours. Now that's partly because as an image consultant, colours is really important. We have a whole colour analysis process working with clients to help them shift how they feel, bring out the best in them visually. But I want to talk to you more about the connection between colours and energy and how colours can really help shift our inner worlds.
Yes, colours are, this is again one of the most awesome parts of of the universe that we live in, how everything has got a vibration. Colours have always traditionally been linked with the chakras. So all the rainbow colours go up through your central spiritual column. Each colour has a frequency. Each colour has a healing power, and each colour is related to different energies. So colour is of absolute vital importance. It's not just that it looks nice, but it has a very profound and balancing effect on the human energy field, because each colour will bring into your energy field a different frequency, which can shift lower frequencies and blocks. And you know, colour therapy is a very well-known old system for shifting energy blocks within the human energy field.
Okay, so let's get real with this. Tell me about red. Or tell me about other colours that can really help support someone who's feeling stuck and needs shifting into a higher energetic vibration.
Okay, so red, as you know, is the colour of the root chakra. So this is all about safety, security. It's our drive, our passion. I've got my little list here from my Divine Healing folder. So red will release energies like anger, frustration. It will deal with issues around power imbalances, control, materialism, sapping each other's energy. And it's great for areas around your root chakra, which are your lower back, your legs, your hips. It will affect your circulation, stimulates any underactive conditions that a person can have, because it just brings this burst of energy. I mean, if you see somebody in a red dress, you can't help but get that uplifting feeling. It's a very optimistic colour. It's related to passion and enthusiasm for life. So if you're feeling a bit drab, just put on something red and it will lift your frequency very, very quickly.
And which other colours can you share a little bit about before we have to end?
So gold is one that is really beautiful. Gold is very significant in the spiritual healing realms. It's related to wisdom, philosophy, and just brings deep feelings of bliss. And what it releases are deep fears, anxiety, and confusion. And gold's also really good at dealing with shock and trauma. Now, I always say this to my clients about, if you look at the ancient goddesses, they would all be wearing gold. And people look at gold jewelry and think it's to do with, it's ornamental, but it's actually not. Those were spiritual warriors, those goddesses. They knew exactly what they were doing. There would be gold tikka around their third eye. There'd be a gold choker, stopping anything getting into their throat chakra. A huge gold. If you look at those Rani Hars in those Indian gold shops, there's this big wad of gold here to protect your heart.
Right, it's very reflective. As you're speaking, that just really came to heart, that it's so, like you say, reflecting back energy, so you can deflect negative energy that's coming towards you.
Really, yeah. And so it's even just, you know, if you needed a quick energy boost, and to connect with the highest parts of your being, is just to see yourself being flooded with gold energy. You know, your thought, energy follows thought. And we are way more powerful than our little minds think we are. So flooding yourself with any colour, even instantly, you know, seeing yourself flooded with red if you're feeling a bit low in energy, you need some soothing, just get a download of green. You need to learn to speak up. Blue, that's the colour all around the throat chakra. You know, the highest chakras, you've got indigo, violet. Power, it's all about yellow. It's
that's interesting. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Well, Harinder, thank you so much. It's been such a lovely time chatting to you today and to learning more. And yes, please do hold up your book one more time for our viewers. For anyone interested, The Power of Speaking Your Truth, How to Become Confident and Assertive. Thank you so much, Harinder. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Tazeen. I really appreciate it. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.